Welcome to EpiSTEM podcast. This EpiSTEM podcast is brought to you from the National Centre of STEM Education at the School of Education in the University of Limerick. I'm your host, Geraldine Simmie, and I'm the Professor of STEM Education here at the Centre and the Director of EpiSTEM. And my co-host,
Michelle Starr, and I am the Research Liaison Officer in EpiSTEM.
Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. And we're joined today by a very special guest, Dr. Avril Mc Loughlin. You're very welcome, Avril.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Avril's a lecturer and researcher here in the World Music Academy, and so we're very, very delighted to bring her in at long last. You've been playing beautiful tunes and everything for us. And
Avril has been organising all of the students that have been coming here every week to play a wonderful piece for us. So thank you so much. Yeah. And now we can talk about music and STEM and how their relationship.
Yeah, and we're hoping to, I suppose, look at the arts in a co-equal way with STEM. We're very interested in a broad view, and we're interested, I suppose, for our Futuristic Village and for the students that are working in that. They have actually arts teachers involved now, as well as science and engineering and mathematics teachers out in the school. But we could have a little bit of a trip down memory lane to just actually talk a little bit about music being with the arts, and then how that can have a co-equal relationship with STEM, be arts for its own sake, have its own respect, and not be just coming into STEM to make a little bit of creativity or whatever you hear, because there is a diverse literature. It's a contested literature at the moment, and it's not something that's completely closed in any shape or form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's and your point about it being co-equal, like it has to be equal. It has to, it's got an importance all of its own, and it's not just as you say, like a salt and pepper kind of sprinkling on the top.
No, it's so not even a sweetener. No, it's not.
So it has to be done in a authentic way.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the British Education Research Association. We had a project some years ago, and we had a lot of contestation because we were sent to do a STEAM education project, and that was the argument that was bursting out at the time, because obviously philosophy and history and the arts have kind of, I suppose, they haven't been as respected in the last decade as much as the sciences, because we keep hearing about STEM and STEAM and STEM all the time, and integrated STEM, and so the policy slippage seems to have happened for philosophy and history and the arts. But we're not interested in that slippage. We're interested in ethics, a holistic education, the proper place of the arts as co-equal partners.
Yeah, and I mean, you come from the World Academy of Music. Have I got the title right? Yes.
Irish World Academy of Music.
Yeah, the Irish World Academy of Music
and dance.
And dance, sorry. Yeah. So, and you're working, and it's great having you work with us. And is this a first for you, or do you want to tell us what you do, and then is this the first working?
Yeah,
with STEM?
So I'm from Westmeath. I grew up playing Irish traditional fiddle. I did some classical music, some classical violin as well. Played piano, guitar, sang, and I came to the Irish World Academy back when it was this side of the bridge. And I did my undergrad here, and I did my teaching degree afterwards, and followed it on more recently with a PhD. I've been teaching in post-primary and music education settings for a number of years, and so it's been really it's been a fun career so far, very, very diverse, and I just see for me the importance of music in kids' lives and in all our lives, but the importance of providing opportunities for students and for kids to have music and to learn about music, to be able to play and to learn an instrument, to be able to listen critically to a piece of music, and to understand where it's coming from, and to have that appreciation. So, and it's not about developing amazing international performers, but it's about developing that interest and that appreciation for music and the love of music in people, and this is a lifelong love. So it's not about, for a specified time. It's creating this understanding and this love of music that people will have for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I can relate with that. I had a teacher in primary school that taught me. I used to nip into the convent to, learn to get a piano lesson. And we had another guy in the village, and we didn't even afford a guitar, but we had a guy who loaned us a guitar for a few lessons before we go to the youth club. And that has been a love of definitely in my life all the way through. So that is a real love for its own sake, for the enjoyment, the pleasure of it and everything. But obviously there are use values, and we don't have an issue with those as well. But there's something upstream of that as well. That's the piece that we want to hold, the upstream, the immeasurable pieces. That's very important, because holistic means that there are pieces here that need to be named but not measured and not brought into the metrics world. Yeah. Would you agree?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. And so there's we were chatting earlier, and the sum of the parts, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And what you get from music, and what you learn about yourself, about the world around you, you can't measure that.
No.
And you can't, there's no test, or at least I haven't come across a test that can measure, how deeply music affects you and how it can touch your soul.
So as well as the technical pieces in all of our subjects, whether they're STEM or the arts or wherever they are, as well as those instrumental pieces, they all have a zeitgeist there that if you look at the holistic piece, whether it has been called, whether it is spirit or ethics or aesthetics or the search for beauty or whatever way you want to call it, there is something upstream of the actual techne. Obviously, if you're in the orchestra, you need the techne right, but you also need that deep listening and all those other qualities. Can you just talk to me a little bit about your research interest? You have your writings and your papers and chapters now. Your key research interest is in that kind of theory practice area, is it?
Yeah. So for me, so I'm music education, and so as I said, I'm a traditional fiddle player. Still go to sessions and really enjoy playing tunes. And for me, it's about understanding my practice. And whether that's as a musician or as a teacher, really getting into the nub of what it is, what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and what's going really well and what do I need it to improve on. And that's a constant reflective process. I always you might improve something, one aspect, and then something else crops up, or your focus shifts, and
it's because music is so multi-layered and so complex in that space. It's so many layers between your rhythms and your all the different things that you're constantly lifelong learning on it.
Yeah, and you're constantly trying to get better.
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's constant.
And you were saying as well, because I read in your, some of your work, that you talk a lot about of that. It's about listening to others and others listening to you, and you taking critiques with one another, and having empathy with one another's work, and so it's a process of really working with others, that you're learning everything from. Or am I wrong or right?
No, very, very much right. So in my teaching, I do a lot of group work.
Yes.
And and this could be small, like it could be peer group, or it could be groups of 4 or 5, but that people listen to each other, and they listen, they truly listen. So that active listening. So it's not just about hearing somebody talk, but actually hearing the message, and this could be through music, or it could be through their words they use. And so there's that listening to it, and responding to that.
With empathy, of course.
Yeah. And excuse me.
And of course, that all brings in the relational aspect of music and education and all of that as well. It brings in the relational piece, because actually that deep listening and everything, presence, authentic education. So in a way, where we have our online classes and all of that, we know that we would deeply affect the young people's well-being and everything if we were to keep all of our classroom work online and that we weren't to be present, because the deep listening it's an emotional and affective area as well as the cognitive and social and all that.
Yeah, and it cuts across all subjects.
Yeah.
And I think, as you say, it cuts across all subjects, but I think music, it's like us chatting here. We could do this online, but there's something more that we get from being here in the same room. Yeah. And it's the exact same with music. Yeah. You have to be
more than the sum of the parts, for sure. Yeah. But also what you also can learn as well is, I suppose somebody can be technically competent. I've learning and trying to improve my singing and all of that. You can learn, you can actually get the song technically right, but the listener can't hear your emotional pain when you're trying to sing. Yeah. You're trying to sing about maybe something sad or whatever, but unless you can get into the pain of that, the audience can't feel it. And it's the feeling that you have to bring out of the music.
Yeah. There's that soul.
Because music moves us. Body embodied and everything. And it's a lot. We have a lot to learn from music and education. The relational embodied nature of it, because I suppose the universities and the higher education institutions historically, and looking back on where they started, there's a kind of a pathological fear of talking about bodies and feelings and all of that world. The sensuous and the sensate beings that we are. Okay, so let's say we move on to, you're talking about a democratic classroom then in that space. The democratic classroom, having young people listen to one another, work in groups together, look at all of the learning of a democratic space, giving each other sharing, listening, all of that really good stuff that is actually the building of a trusting environment. And isn't that what a democratic space requires?
Big time. And music can really help develop that and to help foster that. And the skills that we need to be a democratic society and to be able to work together, to listen to each other, to actively hear like what we're all saying, to be able to critique in a respectful and meaningful way, and to be able to make decisions together collectively and to be able to move forward. And music and music making, so performing, creating music together. So and I'm not just talking about composition, composing your own music, but actually like sitting, performing together, putting together a song or a piece of music and working together towards a shared goal.
And it doesn't, that shared goal, there must be within that process that there's differences and it's discussed. And because what I love about you mentioned earlier, it's about it cuts across cultures, isn't it? It cuts across Irish music with American music, different type of music. It's like, okay, there's no borders. It's kind of a sharing of where I think we forget the divisiveness that comes into the world, this nationalism, whereas music is very good for that, breaking those borders and those barriers.
Yeah, I see a paper here like in a journal called Music and Science, and it's by this fellow Rabinovich, and it's talking about this potential of music to affect social change. And of course that social cohesion, a lot of people are studying that now, that understanding those multicultures. How do we actually have social harmony and social cohesion in our society? And of course, music can be one of the ways in which we can bring the joy of that. And it brings joy as well as the embodied experience and all of that in there. And of course, even as a symbolic language, if people in the group are actually going to read a bit of music together, the symbolic language, it cuts across all the verbal, the French, English, German, whatever, and the Gaeilge, it's actually there written in its own symbolic language.
Yeah, and interestingly, so there's that language you speak of, like staff notation, but there's also loads of different languages that we use, so different types of notation. So in Irish traditional music, it'd be called ABCs. So in popular music, popular musicians and rock musicians will, take down notes or specific key points within a song or a piece of music. And so we all, like, our different cultures will have different ways of representing their music on paper, and maybe they might not represent it at all, but it's to be able to understand the variety and to be able to appreciate and to recognize and respect the variety in
and it goes songs. And it's even you see a baby, they'd understand, because it's about rhythm and vibration and
resonance in the body and everything,
which is our science again. These wavelengths and rhythm and frequencies, vibrations, but that's what the brain hears, and it just softens us. It's emotional. You can bring different emotions depending on what way we are.
So if we have the care-based piece of a democracy in there, and we're building the trust and all of that, which of course is anathema to somebody like to a model that's actually a low trust model, it's actually doing the opposite. It's trying to build all the trust so that people can actually get into that deep space of listening to one another and all of that, and being able to disagree respectfully. Mm-hmm. The next piece of this then is the power piece, because democracy doesn't involve, Gert Biesta says that democracy isn't about living well in the world with people who are like us. It's actually living well in the world with people who are not like us. Mm. So there's an elitism in democracy in the world at the moment. There's an elitism in science. There's an elitism in music, going through the years.
Everywhere.
It's everywhere. Mm. And can you talk to us about that? How could we... if you like, we don't even have to have the answers now, but what's your thoughts on how can we agree beyond consensus? Like, that we don't all have to be on the same hymn sheet as well, because people will be different from us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, just in terms of elitism in music, it's definitely in terms of access to music. And so access to being able to access instrumental or vocal lessons,
which is down to money.
Yes. Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
very
material
much, and that capital that that you that your family has, and being able to access this and these lessons, and these lessons will be outside of school. So it's now some schools would be very lucky in that they'll have music education. So they'll have a teacher teaching an instrument or instruments, but also there's the music generation that conduct workshops and outreach programs in areas, and
that's across the country as well.
Across the country, and so this is given an awful lot more kids access to music education and to vocal and instrumental education, and this could be everything from rock and pop to jazz, traditional, classical, R&B, to rap. Yeah. So it's a wide variety.
I love that idea, because access and participation, and also not forgetting the money question, the investment, the resources that are needed. I suppose the key one that's coming in my mind as Kathleen Lynch talks about equality of condition, that you actually have to provide all of the equality of condition for the young people, and not only learning the music but having some kind of a decent chance in life. And I suppose that's our justice question as well as our care.
Because another thing, I grew up listen to music in the 70s and 80s. I suppose I'm telling my age here now. But, you look back, I remember music, because music tells stories. It's tradition, but 70s and 80s growing up. So you had the Beatles. They came out, they're working class. So you had all these working class. You had The Who, you had Pulp. Remember Common People? Not even going to sing it now, but So, but we don't have that anymore. It's seemingly it's gone. There's only I read a paper, and I forget, and I'll put it up on. There's only 7% of the music industry today is from people from working class, and that's cutting across technical, etc., because it's becoming, it's I suppose the access, but also it's the competition, I'd say, to get into the industry.
The money
as
needed,
well.
the kind of money that's needed in all those.
Which is very sad.
I think it also might be a broader kind of an even broader kind of ideas around that, because you know, the way musicians tour, the way musicians develop their practice is very different to, and the opportunities are very different to what it would have been like in the 70s. You know, it was, I suppose, a little bit more linear. In the 70s, you create your album, your
or
LP,
you could put
or your
instruments
EP.
into a van and go off to a ballroom.
But you have your album and you tour with your album. Whereas now it's you create your album, goes online, you tour, but you have to constantly create this content, this online content. You know, so it's
because
different.
We're in the social media world.
So it is a very different time.
And there's gatekeepers, of course, on the radio, because we're not hearing all the music that's out there. So that's,
and of course, artificial intelligence will make that even go more, which we'll obviously need to lean into, but we also ethically need to be careful with it, because we will start leaving a lot of people behind. So just kind of to wrap up in terms of some of the STEM education there, you know, Christopher Dingham in the States is doing a lot of work on the synergies between music and STEM, which is nice to see. And I see we've a new paper here from Cheng and others in China, and they're looking at the, I suppose, the STEAM education on the basis of, like, say, asking students to design their own musical instrument. Now, obviously, they're in labs where they probably have loads of materials and all that, but kind of, I suppose, that creativity, critical thinking and all of that. But I think from listening to Michelle and yourself, Avril, today, I'm kind of thinking that we've got underneath it as well a consciousness, a raising of a consciousness, and wanting seeing the arts and music and STEM education, if they become a STEAM education, that it has to be a co-equal dance between them. And then if it's interdisciplinary, trans and polymath and the whole thing, then we've got somewhere. And it's a discussion for another day as well.
Yeah,
thank you
definitely.
so much for coming on. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, just it's been a pleasure, and it's been fantastic working with you both. So thank you.
Anything else you want to add, Michelle?
No, I think you said it very well, because I know you want to say a few words to people that have worked closely with us.
With us during and we're actually taking a break now until about the middle of January. Because we've done 9 podcasts so far. It's been a real roller coaster, very enjoyable. You've provided us from the Irish World Music Academy of Music and Dance. You've provided us with wonderful musicians, and it's been just a joy that they've come over and played us out every day. And we've had nice guest speakers, so our own colleagues have been very supportive. And we've only had the tip of the iceberg, really, in terms of who we need to say thanks to today. We'll want to say thanks to all the researchers in EpiSTEM, our own research centre here in the School of Education, our School of Education colleagues, all the STEM teachers and students around the country who have been listening to the podcast and been giving us feedback on it. Especially a word of thanks to our partners in the Hunt Museum and in the Limerick Education Support Service, and in the 7 schools in Limerick that are actually working on our Futuristic Village project at the moment. We also have a word of thanks to local industry and local enterprises, particularly the companies Serasep and Analog, who have really been very, very good to get us on the road, and we're doing projects for them at the moment that we'll tell everyone about in the new year. We have a very special partnership with DCU. It's called the Stint Project, where we get our STEM students have 3 months paid internship in an industry in Ireland, a STEM-related industry, and we run that with them for the last number of years, and that's been going very, very well. I also want to say a special word of thanks, if I can, to a few of our international listeners, to Sarah Tolbert, a professor in the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, Professor Manfred Lang, who's retired now from the Leibniz Institute of Education in Kiel in Germany, and Professor Sylvia Edling, who sends her best regards from the University of Gävle in Sweden. So we're going to play out today. We have a very special piece of music today, Sharbik Guha. And Sharbik is known by his friends and all his buddies as Bicky. So his project is Bicky and his buddies, he says. And Bicky is a singer, songwriter, an acoustic guitarist. He's a second year on the PhD in arts practice. He's going to play a beautiful song for us today called Hey There, Fellow Dreamer. And he tells me that he wrote it during the pandemic, and what he was saying to people was, look, I know it's tough getting through this pandemic, but go out there and do your thing. So take it away, Bicky.
Hey there, fellow dreamer. What have you been dreaming tonight? Are you in faraway galaxies, sitting on a star, lost in your art? Or are you just sipping coffee with a notebook in your hand, overthinking about the silliest of things, with the intention to make your mark? And I just ask you these questions to tell you that you're not alone. I'm often guilty about the same old mischiefs, and honestly it makes me glow. So keep doing what you love to do, and make everyone mesmerized. And as the world gets more mechanized, you and I will spread our wings and fly.